The silence inside the bridal suite felt louder than any scream. I stood in front of the tall mirror, my white gown flowing around me like a dream that was already fading. My hands were cold. My heart was beating too fast. The gold clock on the wall said 3:30. The ceremony was supposed to start at 3. 30 minutes late. Guests were waiting downstairs. Family had flown in from all over the country. My mother had spent months planning every small detail. The flowers were perfect. The music was ready. The aisle was covered in soft white petals. But my fiancé was not there. The room that had once been full of laughter and excitement now felt heavy and tight. My mom walked in again, her smile thin and forced. "Traffic," she said softly. "He's probably stuck." She adjusted my veil, even though it was already perfect. My best friend stood near the window, pretending to scroll through her phone, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Theodore was never late. In 2 years, he had never missed a dinner, never skipped a call, never been careless with time. He was organized, careful, reliable. So why wasn't he answering his phone? I tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. A cold fear slowly spread inside my chest. It wasn't just worry anymore. It was something darker, something wrong. Then the door opened suddenly. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought it was him. I imagined him rushing in, apologizing, smiling that calm smile that always made me feel safe. But it wasn't Theodore. It was Sebastian Hale, my boss. He stood at the doorway, tall and serious, his dark suit sharp against the soft white room. His red hair caught the light, and his blue eyes looked harder than I had ever seen them. He did not look surprised. He looked prepared. "I need to speak with Emma," he said firmly. "Alone." My parents looked confused, but something in his voice made them step out without arguing. And the door closed quietly behind them. The silence returned, but now it felt charged. I swallowed. "Mr. Hale, what are you doing here?" He walked toward me slowly. Each step felt heavy. "Emma," he said quietly, "Theodore is not coming." The words hit me like ice water. "What?" "He was arrested an hour ago." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the vanity to steady myself. "Arrested?" I whispered. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "He's been under investigation for corporate fraud. For months." My mind refused to understand. "No, that's not possible. He works in consulting. He was using you," Sebastian said, his voice calm but sharp. "He got close to you to access financial records at Hale Industries." My breath stopped. The dress suddenly felt too tight, too heavy. "What are you saying?" I asked, barely able to speak. "I'm saying your engagement was part of his plan." The world didn't just break, it shattered. 2 years. 2 years of dinners, and of soft kisses, of promises, of planning a future together. All fake. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair behind me. The skirt of my gown spread across the floor like something broken. "He loved me," I said, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. Sebastian didn't argue. He didn't comfort me with false hope. "He used you," he said gently. "And he's not coming back." Tears burned my eyes, but they didn't fall yet. The pain was too sharp, too sudden. "Oh, everyone is downstairs," I whispered. "They're waiting." Hundreds of people, waiting to see me walk down the aisle, waiting to celebrate a love that never existed. The humiliation felt worse than the heartbreak. Sebastian moved closer, but not too close. He knelt in front of me, a powerful CEO on one knee in front of a woman in a ruined wedding dress. "Listen to me," he said softly. I looked at him through blurred vision. Most of those guests have never met Theodore properly. Oh, they came to see you happy. I frowned. What does that matter? He took a steady breath. Pretend I'm your fiancé. The words felt unreal. What? Walk down the aisle with me. Smile. Say the vows. Let them believe the wedding happened. I stared at him. You're my boss. They don't know me well enough to question it. This is crazy. Maybe, he admitted, but it saves you from public humiliation, and I will not let that man destroy you twice. Something in his eyes was fierce, but protective. He stood and held out his hand. You don't deserve to be pitied, he said quietly. You deserve dignity. My heart was broken. My future had just disappeared. But in that moment, his hand felt steady, solid, a lifeline. I looked at it for what felt like forever. If I walked out alone, I would collapse. If I stayed in this room, I would drown. So I placed my trembling hand in his. His grip was warm, strong. Just look at me, he whispered as we stepped into the hallway. Don't look at anyone else. The doors to the ceremony hall opened. A wave of whispers filled the air. Music started. My father stood frozen at the front, confused. My mother covered her mouth. Sebastian didn't hesitate. He walked beside me, calm and confident, like he had planned this his entire life. I kept my eyes on him, on his steady expression, on the way he held my hand, like he meant it. When we reached the altar, the officiant looked unsure, but Sebastian nodded once, and the vows began. When it was his turn, he spoke clearly. I promise to protect you, he said, his voice strong, to stand beside you in every storm. The words were meant to sound normal, but they felt personal. Then came the final moment. You may kiss the bride. My body froze. Sebastian stepped closer. His hand gently touched my cheek. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've got you. His lips brushed mine, soft, careful, respectful, not claiming, shielding. The crowd erupted in applause, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat, because somehow, in the middle of the worst day of my life, my fake wedding felt more real than the one I had planned for 2 years. And I didn't know if that scared me more than the betrayal, or if it was the first time I felt truly safe all day. The applause followed us all the way down the aisle, loud and cheerful, as if nothing was wrong, as if my world had not just fallen apart. Sebastian kept his hand firmly at my back, guiding me through the smiling faces and congratulations. People hugged us. They laughed. They told us how beautiful the ceremony was. Beautiful. If only they knew. Thank you for coming, Sebastian said smoothly to every guest. His voice was calm, controlled, confident. No one questioned him. No one doubted him. He never let go of me. When we finally reached the quiet hallway behind the main ballroom, I let out a shaky breath. The hardest part is over, he murmured near my ear. I nodded, though my heart still felt raw and exposed. A sleek black car was waiting outside. He opened the door for me like this was planned, like he had always been the groom. I slid inside, my white dress filling the back seat. He closed the door gently, then walked around to the driver's side. The moment the car started moving, the silence between us felt different from the silence in the bridal suite. This one wasn't suffocating. Now it was steady. Where are we going? I finally asked. Home, he said simply. Home. That word should have belonged to Theodore, to the future we had built together. But now it felt empty. We drove through tall iron gates that opened automatically. The car moved down a long driveway lined with oak trees. At the end stood a massive stone mansion, elegant and powerful. I had worked for Sebastian Hale for 3 years, yet I had never been here. What the house looked less like a home and more like a fortress. The car stopped. He turned to me, his blue eyes softer than before. "You can stay here," he said, "until everything settles." "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not," he replied. "You're my wife now, at least to the world." The word wife made my stomach twist. He stepped out and came around to open my door. I took his hand and allowed him to help me out. Inside, the house surprised me. It wasn't cold like I expected. The floors were dark wood. Large windows let in warm light. Paintings filled the walls with color. It felt lived in, not staged. He led me into a quiet living room. "Emma," he said gently, "the news of Theodore's arrest is everywhere. Its reporters will connect your name to his. Your apartment is not safe right now." The thought of cameras and whispers made my chest tighten. "You can work remotely," he continued. "Stay here. No one needs to know." He paused before adding something that changed everything. "I want you as my personal assistant here, not because you need help, but because I need someone I trust." Trust. The word hit differently after today. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. I know." His voice was steady. No pressure. No expectation. I looked at him carefully. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering purpose. And right now, purpose felt like oxygen. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll stay." A faint smile touched his lips. "Good," he replied. "And stop calling me Mr. Hale. It's Sebastian." That night, I lay in a room bigger than my entire apartment. The wedding dress was gone. In its place, I wore simple cotton pajamas his housekeeper had found for me. My finger still held the plain gold wedding band from the ceremony. It wasn't real, but it didn't feel fake either. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. For one peaceful second, I forgot everything. Then I saw the ring. Reality rushed back. I got dressed and went downstairs. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen. A kind older woman smiled at me. "You must be Emma. I'm Mrs. Porter." She handed me a mug. "With cinnamon," she added. I blinked. "How did you, Mr. Hale mentioned it." My heart skipped. Cinnamon and coffee was something I always brought from home to the office. A tiny habit. Something no one noticed. Except he had. Later, I walked into his home office. He was already there, typing, focused. He looked up when I entered. "You can take the ring off," he said calmly. "The performance is over." I glanced down at my hand. Slowly, I shook my head. "I'd rather keep it on." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Why?" "It reminds me that someone showed up for me," I answered honestly. For a brief second, something changed in his expression. Respect. Maybe something warmer. "As you wish," he said quietly. "Mrs. Hale." The title sent a strange flutter through my chest. The next few days passed in quiet routine. I organized his schedule, managed calls, filtered emails. I threw myself into work because it kept my mind from replaying Theodore's lies. But one afternoon, everything crashed again. I was sorting through a secured email folder when a subject line caught my eye. Internal Investigation Report. Theodore Grant. My hands started shaking. I knew I shouldn't open it. But I did. The report was detailed, cold, clinical. It described how Theodore targeted me deliberately, how he called me an easy entry point, how he planned to marry me to gain full access to sensitive company data. "She's completely devoted," one message read. "After the wedding, she'll trust me with everything." My chest burned. I wasn't his fiancé. I was a strategy. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't hear Sebastian enter the room. "Emma," His voice cut through my pain. He saw the screen, understood immediately. Without a word, he took the tablet from my hands and closed it. Then he placed it high on a shelf, out of reach. He pulled a chair in front of me and sat down so our knees almost touched. "He does not define you," he said firmly. I couldn't speak. He saw kindness as weakness. That was his failure, not yours. A tear slipped down my cheek. He didn't try to hug me. He didn't pity me. He just stayed. "Cry," he said softly. "I'm right here." And for the first time since everything collapsed, I allowed myself to break. Not alone, but in front of the one man who had stepped into the fire with me and didn't seem afraid of getting burned. The days after that felt quieter. Not empty, just softer. Something had shifted between us. Plus, it was no longer just about protection. It was about presence. Sebastian did not hover. He did not treat me like I would shatter. But he noticed everything. If I skipped lunch, food appeared on my desk. If I worked too late, he would gently close my laptop and say, "That's enough for today." One evening, he knocked lightly on my bedroom door. "Bring a jacket," he said. "We're going out." "I'm not really in the mood," I admitted. "I know," he replied calmly. "Well, that's why we are going." He drove us away from the city, up into the hills. We stopped at a quiet overlook that showed the entire skyline glowing below. The air was cool, peaceful. We stood side by side at the railing, looking out at the lights. "When my father passed away," he said after a long silence, "I felt completely lost." I glanced at him. He was staring at the horizon. The company felt heavy. My life felt gray. Someone once told me to find something constant, something that doesn't disappear when everything else does. He tilted his head slightly toward the sky. "The stars are always there, even when we can't see them." His voice lowered. "Your goodness is like that, Emma. It didn't disappear just because someone tried to use it." A lump formed in my throat. No one had ever spoken to me like that before. Not with admiration, not with quiet belief. For the first time, I did not feel like a victim. I felt seen. A few days later, while wandering through the gardens behind the mansion, I found a small wooden door hidden under ivy. Curious, I pushed it open. Inside was a greenhouse, but not one filled with flowers. Instead, delicate bonsai trees lined wooden shelves. Tiny forests, shaped with patience and care. In the center stood Sebastian. His sleeves were rolled up. His focus was intense as he carefully trimmed a small branch. He looked different here. Not like a CEO. Not like the powerful man who commanded boardrooms. Just Sebastian. He noticed me and straightened, slightly embarrassed. "This is where I come to think," he admitted. "It's beautiful," I whispered. He walked me through the trees, explaining each one with surprising warmth. A twisted juniper that survived storms. A maple that changed colors every season. Then he stopped in front of a small cherry blossom tree. "It blooms for a short time," he said softly. "It reminds me to protect beautiful moments while they last." His eyes met mine. The air changed. "Can I try?" I asked quietly. He smiled, something genuine and rare. He stepped behind me, placing the pruning shears gently in my hand. His fingers wrapped around mine to guide the cut. His chest was close to my back. His breath brushed near my ear. "Here," he murmured, gently. But neither of us moved. Time slowed. The warmth of his hand over mine felt intimate in a way that scared me. Well, this was not a performance. This was something else. Later that week, during a video call with the company board, something happened that made everything clear. I was seated beside his desk, taking notes quietly. One of the board members, Mr. Davies, smirked through the screen. "So, Hale," he said casually, "I hear you married the girl from accounting. Let's hope she has better judgment in business than in fiancés." The words hit like a slap. Heat rushed to my face. My stomach twisted. I lowered my eyes, wishing I could disappear. Sebastian went still. Completely still. Then his voice cut through the room like ice. "My wife," he said slowly, "is the most loyal and capable person in this company. Blunt. And if anyone questions her integrity again, I will consider it a personal matter." He ended the call without waiting for a response. The office fell quiet. I lifted my gaze slowly. He was looking at me, not with anger, with fierce protectiveness. In that moment, something inside me shifted completely. This was no longer a fake marriage built on desperation. This was a man who would stand in front of the world for me. That night, I found him sitting alone by the pool, at the water glowing blue under the stars. "I wanted to thank you," I said softly. "For telling the truth?" he replied. "For choosing me." He looked at me then, and the walls he kept around himself fell away. "Seeing someone use your kindness like that," he said quietly, "it made me furious. I couldn't stand the thought of you being hurt alone." He stood and stepped closer. "It wasn't pity, Emma. It was instinct." My breath caught. "An instinct I feel every time I'm near you." The confession hung between us. Slowly, he lifted his hand and touched my cheek. His fingers were warm. "Careful. I can't pretend this is only about protection anymore," he whispered. My heart pounded. He leaned closer, giving me time to step away. I didn't. His lips met mine. This kiss was nothing like the one at the altar. This one was real, deep, slow, honest. It carried weeks of tension, silent glances, and growing feelings we had both tried to ignore. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I felt both terrified and alive. Because I knew one thing with painful clarity. I was falling in love with the man who had once only pretended to be mine. And that scared me more than anything Theodore had ever done. The morning after our kiss felt different. The house was the same. The sunlight was the same. But the air between us had changed. Every small movement felt heavier. But when our hands brushed at the breakfast table, my heart jumped. When our eyes met, neither of us looked away fast enough. I was scared. Not of him. Of my own feelings. He had saved me on the worst day of my life. He had protected me, given me shelter, given me purpose. But was what I felt love, or was it gratitude? Was my heart choosing him because I truly loved him, or because he had been the only steady ground when everything else collapsed? The doubt grew louder each hour. That afternoon, while he was at a meeting in the city, I made a decision that broke my own heart. I packed a small suitcase. Not much. Just enough. Then I sat at the desk in my bedroom and wrote him a letter. "Sebastian, you stepped into my life when everything fell apart. You protected me when I had nothing left. But I need to know who I am without your protection. I need to know that what I feel is real love, not fear of losing the one person who stood beside me. If I stay right now, I will always question it. I have to stand on my own first." My hands trembled as I slid the wedding band off my finger. The ring had started as a lie, but it had become something else. I placed it on top of the letter. I picked up my suitcase and turned toward the door. Sebastian was standing there. He must have come home early. His eyes moved from the suitcase, to the bed, to the ring. The color drained from his face. "You're leaving?" he asked quietly. The pain in his voice almost shattered my resolve. "I'm not running from you," I said through tears. "I'm running from my fear." He stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. "Look at me," he said. I did. You were never someone I saved, he said firmly. From the moment you walked down that aisle with your head held high, you were the strongest person in that room. His voice softened. You changed my life, Emma. What you brought light into places I didn't even realize were dark. He picked up the ring from the bed and held it in his palm. This started as protection, he said. But what I feel for you is not protection. It's love. The word hung between us, clear, certain. He stepped closer. I don't want you here because you need saving. I want you here because I choose you. My breath shook. I don't want an assistant, he continued. I want a partner, an equal, a future. He didn't kneel. Well, he didn't make a dramatic scene. He simply took my hand. Stay, he whispered. Not because you owe me. Stay because you want to. And in that moment, I realized something. If I left, it wouldn't be strength. It would be fear. I slowly set the suitcase down. I'm staying, I said. The relief in his eyes was immediate, real. That evening, he surprised me. I'm taking you on a real first date, he said. No lies, no pretending. He drove us to a small Italian restaurant I had once mentioned loving. Nothing fancy, just warm lights and loud laughter. We talked for hours. Not about work, not about Theodore, about childhood memories, bad teenage haircuts, dreams we had never told anyone. For the first time, I wasn't the girl who had been betrayed, and he wasn't the man who had rescued me. We were just Emma and Sebastian, two people choosing each other. At the end of the night, as we stood outside the mansion, and he handed me something small, a silver key. The front door, he said. Not because you live here, but because this is your home if you want it to be. My throat tightened. He wasn't trapping me. He was trusting me. Months passed. Slowly, carefully, we built something real. No more pretending. No more fake vows. Just quiet mornings. Shared coffee. Late-night conversations in the greenhouse. Laughter in rooms that once felt too big. Then one autumn afternoon, he drove me back to the estate where my wedding had fallen apart. My stomach tightened when I saw it. But he led me not to the front hall. To a hidden garden filled with soft lights and roses. In the center stood a small table for two. He turned to face me. The first time we were here, he said, I offered you a lie to protect you. He slowly lowered to one knee. This time, I want to offer you the truth. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a sapphire ring, the exact color of his eyes. Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You are my strength, not my responsibility. You are my choice. Will you marry me? For real this time. Tears streamed down my face. Yes, I whispered. Yes. 1 year after our fake wedding, we stood at an altar again. But this time, it was in our own garden. No whispers, no lies, just family, close friends, and the quiet truth of what we had built. When he kissed me, and it wasn't a shield, it wasn't protection, it was promise. Later that night, as we stood under the stars, I rested my head against his chest. The worst day of my life, I said softly, became the beginning of the best one. He wrapped his arms around me. I knew, he murmured. I was just waiting for you to see it. And sometimes I think about that silent bridal suite, about the moment my world broke. Because if Theodore had shown up that day, I would have never known what it feels like to be chosen. Not out of strategy, not out of convenience, but out of love.